The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Ever living God, whose will it is that all should come to you through your Son, Jesus Christ, inspire our witness to him, that all may know the power of his forgiveness and the hope of his resurrection, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Well, good evening. Thank you for coming out and as we introduce our convention tonight, basically talking about the finances, and then I have some remarks I want to make in the beginning, and then open this up for conversations if you have questions. So we'll get started. The theme is the art of transformation for this year, and our keynote speaker is the Reverend Paul Fromberg, St. Gregory of Nyssa, San Francisco, will be here. Tommy Dillon knew him, and so we're excited about him coming. He is speaking about his book called The Art of Transformation. It shares ideas about how the church can be a catalyst to bring about real change and transformation in the lives of people. And this kind of the clergy conference will build off of this with a different speaker, though. So what we're going to do at convention this year, he will be leading a workshop during registration on Friday. That's different than what we've done before. And so Friday, October the 25th, from 12:30 until 1:30, he's going to explore the topics more in depth then. So you may want to come a little early so you can participate in that. And I would encourage your deputies also to come a little early so that they can hear him more than what he's going to be doing in our gathering. He will speak 3 times during the convention like we did last year, but there will be some times along the way where we will ask questions for you to discuss among yourselves. And maybe even with people around you, not just your folks, but other congregations as well, partly to help you get to know congregations, but also to talk about what he has been teaching. At the same time that Fromberg is teaching, Jay Andrew and Chris Capaldo will be leading a workshop on evangelism. Kind of like what we've done at clergy, ask people to come, and you can split your time up, and some go to one, some go to the other. And that's going to be from 12:30 to 1:30 as well on that Friday. And then the convention will be called to order at 2 o'clock, and we have our worship service, again, like we did last year. We kind of like that model of doing the worship service first. And clergy will be vesting, and so we ask that you come bring your vestments, red stoles for the day. Red stoles? Okay. So on the first day of convention, after the worship service, we'll continue with voting on nominations participating in our, for diocesan committees, resolutions, and learning about the diocesan budget. And then we'll adjourn by 6 o'clock. St. Martin's is hosting a social for us featuring heavy hors d'oeuvres beginning as soon as we adjourn at 6. That's our goal. And then, so we hope that you'll join us before people go out to eat. And then, let's see. Now, John, I'm a little confused. So, hearing on the budget and the resolution will take place during the time of reception?
So the reception's going on, and there's also hearings on the budget and any resolutions going on at the same time as the reception.
Right. Our Saturday morning begins at 8:30 a.m., goes to 12. We think we'll be finished sooner than that, but it starts at 8:30. And nominations for diocesan positions and committees, and here are some of the nominations. For Secretary of the Diocese, Marcia Wade from St. James, Baton Rouge. Treasurer for the diocese is Alan Brackett from Christ Church Cathedral. Executive Board, the very Reverend A.J. Heine from St. Augustine's. For the lay, John Musser from Trinity, New Orleans, Tom Oliver, St. Paul's, New Orleans, and David Warrington from St. James in Baton Rouge. The standing committee, one clergy, one lay. The clergy is John Sloan Miller, St. Stephen's Ennis, and the lay is Fred McCullough, St. Mark's Harvey. The disciplinary board, one clergy and two lay. The Reverend Stephen Shortis of St. John's in Thibodaux and Trinity Morgan City, Bennett Ford, Trinity Baton Rouge, and Dottie Sutton of St. Augustine's Metairie. Trustee for the University of the South will elect one lay, and the candidates are Drew Broach, All Saints River Ridge, and Ryan Garrity, Christ Church Cathedral. We have one resolution that's being presented by the Canons and Constitutions Committee. It seeks to amend Canon 29. Canon 29 currently states that clergy minimum compensation be adopted by the Diocesan Convention. The amendment would state that the clergy minimum compensation be adopted by the Executive Board. I really do hope that you will encourage not only your parishioners who are serving as deputies, but other people to come, particularly for the teaching. I think it's important that they come to learn, and that's what conventions are about. So they're welcome to come to the teachings that happen on Friday before convention. And so I'm going to stop right there. Are there any questions so far? Chris is going to walk us through the diocesan budget.
Thank y'all again for coming out. If you didn't pick up the sort of pamphlets we've got out front by the door, there should be 3 pamphlets. One is a copy of the presentation that we're going to sort of go over today. The second is our attempt at a narrative budget that was a big hit last year that we tried to try again this year. And the third was a copy of that proposed resolution being put before convention. Is this anyone's, I guess, first pre-convention meeting? So we've got a few new people. So I can still use some of our old jokes, I guess. To give you sort of an idea of the evolution of why we're here, I guess this is maybe the 4th pre-convention or 4th year that we've had pre-convention meetings. Before that, the budget process maybe wasn't as collaborative or maybe transparent. You know, some years you might just sort of show up to convention and that might be the first time you're sort of seeing the budget. We wanted to sort of open up a dialogue and a forum where, folks could go over the budget ahead of convention, and talk about it and raise concerns and ask questions and whatnot and just become educated since you're going to be voting on it. It'd be nice to sort of see it beforehand and, have talk to, folks, and amongst yourselves about it. To sort of talk about how we got, to here, what sort of the life cycle of a budget is. You can make the argument it starts in March when your churches are, filling out your parochial reports and you're going to report what your income and your expenses are. We're going to take the information from those parochial reports and figure out, based on everyone's income, what each church's assessment is. And as you'll see later, our diocese is, our revenues are hardly, the majority of them are, comprised of the congregational assessments. The expenses start a little later, maybe in the summertime. We'll start looking at, what we're sort of forecasting the 2019 expenses are going to be for sort of your fixed items, like, your insurances and utilities and whatnot. While at the same time, we're sending out budget requests to the different heads of committees and commissions and whatnot for sort of those program expenses and asking them, clergy and lay, just like yourselves, what are you anticipating for 2019? What would you like to do, whatnot? And they'll send those back to us, and we'll throw all of that together. We'll have our first draft of a budget. That is going to be put forth before our budget review committee, which is, again, lay and clergy throughout the diocese. They'll ask questions and do their tinkering with it. They'll come up with a draft of their own, and that is going to be put before the executive board, who are going to do the same thing. They're going to ask questions, tinker, addition, subtractions, and whatnot, and they come up with that draft. Once again, it's a draft that's not finalized. That's going to be put forth before convention, and it's at convention where delegates. I'm assuming most or all of y'all are going to be voting at convention as delegates. That's where you come in and you are voting on what the final budget is going to be for the diocesan operations. So that's why we're here tonight, is to sort of this collaboration and talking about that process. Tonight I'm going to go over sort of bird's eye view of what our revenues look like, what our expenses look like, and then we'll tackle some, we'll go look at the budget and maybe tackle some 4 or 5 things that I've identified that, if I were you, I would have questions about it, because why is this going up a sizable amount or whatnot, or maybe, there might be a new item, but I'll try to go in order, but, like I said, this is collaboration, so if, we sort of pass up an item on the budget that, you're like, what is that, or you've got questions about it, or you just feel strongly about it and you want to just express, how you feel about it and testify, basically, by all means, raise your hand or whatnot, and we can address it as we go down. So first is revenue. As you can see, we are projecting for revenue for the diocesan operations $1,760,000, which is approximately about $63,000 more than 2018. As you can see, our revenues are largely based off of the congregational assessments that come from your churches. That number historically has been about the same as it's been every year. It's about this 89% of our revenues, and doesn't seem to change that much. If you were to look at other dioceses out there, you're going to find that that number is high compared to other dioceses. We as a diocese rely upon the church giving more than maybe others out there. Now, you ask yourself, why is that? This pink section, which represents money that's being used for either from endowments or investment income, that's probably going to be larger maybe in other dioceses where we don't have to rely upon giving from their churches quite as much. We're also taking from those investments sort of at the max that we can. So our pink section is not really going to get that much bigger in the foreseeable future. For expenses, you can sort of see a similar theme, or you can certainly see themes that jump out. For 2019, we are projecting a budget of expenses of $1,788,000, which represents about $134,000 in increases. And once again, some themes that sort of jump out is, just having that sort of foundation or support takes up about 50% of the budget, to be able to support your churches and have a bishop and have a canon of the ordinary and staff and a building and utilities, that's already takes up about 50% in that big orange section. Another sort of category that's big that we emphasize in this diocese is the funding of our academic chaplaincies. That's probably the second biggest, followed by the work outside the diocese, the funding of organizations maybe outside of ourselves in that purple area. Everything else is mostly program-related items. Do we have any questions so far, generally speaking? And if not, we can sort of jump into specifics of the budget, I think most, a lot of attention usually goes to the first number for line 1. We're projecting $52,000 more in assessment for next year than over 2018. Now, the assessment rule hasn't changed for next year, so we know that the assessment is based off of church income. And so if the assessments that we are expected to collect are going up, then that means church income throughout the diocese has gone up. I think the last time I looked, without the various 46 or 47 churches out there in this diocese, I think church income increased about $1 million, and so that's translating into $1 million from 2016 to 2017, and so that's translating to increased assessments. Another item on the revenue side that I would draw your attention to is line 10. The money that we are taking from some investments for our seminarian and deacon support. I won't go too far into it because it goes along with an expense line item. I just want to draw your attention to it for when I reference it later. But those two items largely make up the $63,000 increase in revenues that we're budgeting for next year. For expenses, if you've seen this budget before and budgets from years past, most of these items, I would say 99% of these items, are old and existing items that that we've discussed before, and maybe the numbers have just changed. I think the lone new item is on the expense side is line 31. The executive board has proposed to fund, I'm sure maybe some of you have heard that St. Albans is currently doing a capital campaign for some of their long-term maintenance issues, as well as I think the organ that they're working with, and the executive board has voted to fund or contribute to that capital campaign in the amount of $2,500 for next year. So that's the lone sort of new item. You have to really jump for sort of huge variations all the way to line 88, the Iona program, which is our trainings for persons becoming deacons. And that's what I was alluding to earlier. Currently, we're participating in the Iona program, which is a training for persons to become deacons. Currently, the diocese pays a flat fee just to participate in that program. And then there is a per person, I guess, tuition expense that they have. And in the past, we have split that up in 3 ways. We've said, the diocese would pay a third. We've asked, the person training to become a deacon to pay a third. And we've asked whichever church is sponsoring that, candidate to pay a third. For 2019, we are proposing that the diocese pay all of that amount and sort of take put less pressure on persons, training to become the deacons, as well as put less financial pressure on our churches. So that is what that increase is due to. The next item, I guess, that jumps out to me is line 105. Our national, our assessment to the national church is going up about $56,000, which is a very large increase. Although we just had a general convention over this summer, they did not change the rate. The rate that we are paying is still 15% to the national church, which I'm sure for some of you might sound like a lot. I think we don't ask any of our churches to pay. I think the most is 14.5% for every dollar above $500,000. But in recent years, it's been as high as 18 or 19%. So when you sort of compare it to that, 15% sounds good. So the rate hasn't changed, but what is unusual is last year was not a usual year for the diocese. We the diocese received an unexpected, unrestricted request last year, and as any of your churches, if you were to receive such a gift, you would have to put that item on your parochial report in reporting to us. We've got to put that item on our diocesan report and report that to the national church. And it was sizable enough that it's going to cause, just a $50,000 increase for that one item alone. Now, my next question would be, what happened to that money? Is it sitting somewhere where we can, move over $50,000 and, help pay for this? Well, the executive board last fall, I think it was the September meeting, voted on and agreed to take that money and pay down debt that was associated with some of the properties that we have been holding for churches that have closed down. So we're talking, Grace on Canal Street. We're talking maybe Baton Rouge, Holy Spirit. We're talking maybe even Donaldsonville. A line of credit that has been sort of financing these properties while we hold them and try to figure out what to do with them. And so that money per se is not sitting somewhere. And so that's about 50 of the $56,000 increases just from there. The next one that might jump out to you is right under it, line 107, the funding to University of the South, Sewanee, going up $25,000. The executive board has pledged over a 3 to 4 year period of funding University of South Sewanee $75,000 to their building fund / capital campaign. And so this would just represent one payment of potentially 3 to 4 series of payments for that pledge. And that is really it as far as sort of unusual things that jump out. And that results in a, line 173, a deficit of approximately $27,000 to $28,000.